Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to In Defense of the Hays Code, Season 2.
Season 2.
Even if Season 1 just ended a month ago and we didn't say, hey, this is the end of Season 1, we are now officially in Season 2. And thank you for those of you that have stuck with us from the beginning. Thank you to those who are just joined us and who have. Thank you to all of you who have joined at any point and haven't gone, these lunatics are lunatics. We're leaving.
Yeah,
We hope if you consider us lunatics, we're at least your type of lunatic.
that's right. That's right.
And today, as a special sort of season season 2 opener, because there were some wires crossed as to the actual season 2 opener, we will be covering one of my favorite actors and one that I feel has been remarkably underrepresented in this podcast because we haven't covered him before. James Cagney. I wanted to give his full name, and I think his middle name's Francis, but I'm not confident enough to say it. But yeah, so today we will be talking about Mr. James Cagney in what I think is his greatest film, The Roaring Twenties.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize it was your favorite Cagney. All right.
Mhm.
Nice.
I was about to go into why, but yeah, I think it's because for me, why I really like it is the fact that it does cover the whole 20s. You kind of get that feel, with it starting out in World War One and then
Yeah.
progressing.
Yeah, it does. Oh man. Yeah, so let's talk about that.
Mhm.
Just the way they go through time. Um it like the coming on talks a little bit about World War II. It shows um images of Adolf. It shows images of what's going on
Mhm.
in the war, and then it's like, okay, let's roll back time,
Yeah.
and you go to you're in the trenches of WW1, and you're meeting these different characters, um, and yeah, as I was watching it, I knew by the cover it was a gangster flick.
Mhm.
And I know the Roaring Twenties, and I know that Cagney did a lot of gangster movies. This is the first James Cagney movie I've ever seen all the way through.
Nice.
Yep.
Coincidentally enough, it was my first James Cagney film as well when I saw it for the first time.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
I watched it, if memory serves, in my dorm room at UNA. That's the University of North Alabama. For those of you that are not Alabama people, um, I watched a YouTube upload of it because I think I got bored and I was really getting into um, old cinema at the time. Like this was at the very start of me sort of getting into that black and white classic cinema, and so I don't know why I looked that one up specifically. I don't know if somebody had told me about it or if I'd read about it somewhere or if I just typed in James Cagney and that's the first thing that came to mind or that
Hmm.
came up on the search. And so yeah, I watched it for the first time on YouTube
That's hilarious.
4 or 5 years ago.
How many?
More than
Four
that.
or five?
More than that. But we're not going to go into that because that's just going to hurt me.
Yeah, yeah. It was around the time it came out, right?
You know it. Oh,
Um, yeah, so then it goes through, it talks about like just I know you as a history enthusiast.
mhm,
I was gonna say nerd, but enthusiast is probably nicer.
mhm.
Either way, it's fine. Yeah, but as a history enthusiast, I know that uh, you enjoyed watching them go through time.
Mhm.
Um, I did too, because that whole era to me is very very interesting. It's one of my favorite. It's very very glamorized in movies and in books and things like that. And one of the things about the Hays Code is that it 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 does have you pulling for certain characters,
Hmm.
but it also keeps it um, real as far as okay, things didn't always work out great for everybody.
Yeah. There's a scene in particular, very because one thing I find really interesting about this film, and this is one of those that's only interesting in hindsight. This was a pre Maltese Falcon, pre Casablanca Humphrey Bogart.
Oh wow, okay,
So this is early Bogart, back when Bogart usually played these roles as second fiddle to whoever
that's
was on
crazy.
stage. Um, in the scene, and I want to talk about the scene. We'll probably circle back to it more. But yeah, I mean, you think of Bogart a certain way,
Right.
and then it just gets to the well, if it isn't my old sergeant,
Mm.
and the grin he gives him, and you're like,
Oh
oh yeah,
yeah.
no, this man's dangerous. This man's scary.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So I knew going into it was a Cagney film, but
Mhm,
man, knowing that Bogart was gonna be in it,
mhm.
I was so hyped because he's like my favorite of that era. Um, which I don't think is an unpopular
Mm,
opinion.
yeah, that
Um,
might be one of the coldest takes we've ever had on the show.
yeah,
But
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
he's a
It's
good
like
actor,
okay.
unbelievable.
Yeah, right. So yeah, me with everyone else on planet Earth is he's yeah, yeah, probably my favorite of that time period.
Mhm,
Um, and so just knowing that, so I didn't know it was as pre Falcon and pre Casablanca,
mhm,
but just knowing how and who he is when he acts, I knew it was going to be um kind of a unstoppable force meets an unmovable object
mhm.
between Cagney and Bogart. And like I said, I haven't seen Cagney all the way through, but I know his MO,
Yeah.
just from uh just from legend, I guess.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it was very very interesting the the way that they went through time. Let me go back to that
Yeah.
again. Like the effects that they had,
Mhm,
especially for that time, like when they were showing Black Tuesday,
mhm,
and just the the shanty towns and things like that, and just how the world was working. That was a character all of, on its own, in my opinion. Of okay, here's the context, and here's why this person was doing this at this point, and why they can't do it now, and why things are changing, and like the run on the banks. There's
mhm.
just so much that really made it a realistic fictional film, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. And I think it's interesting because, like, you can have movies nowadays that focus on that time period, but this was this was made, and the actors, the cast, or of course cast, the people behind the scenes, the director, the writers, they all lived through this.
Hmm.
So it adds a whole other layer to it to go, oh yeah, this isn't like me when I write stuff set in that time period. I'm having to go off, just either secondhand accounts or research. No, these people got to live this time period.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they were, they saw all the the glitz and the glamour of the 20s, especially in Hollywood, give way
Mm,
to, sort of the Great Depression. And, they had all these news stories about like Al Capone and, uh, Jaime Walt and all these other different gangsters. So,
yeah, yeah. In real time for them.
mhm,
And so, there's, like you said, movies that are made today, and of course, your books that, well, your books just bring me right into that time era,
mhm.
uh, era, not error, not incorrect, but era.
Mhm.
Um, and there's some movies I think that are made nowadays that do a really good job of that. Some of them not so much. Some of them feel like very like, okay, let's just, it kind of feels like they're rewriting history just to glamorize everything.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, man, the ones that are done well these days, and I know there's one that we both really like, that maybe we'll do that one sometime. I'm not gonna say the
Mhm.
name of it yet,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm talking
Oh
about.
yeah. Yeah.
The audience doesn't know, so
Mhm.
that's a mystery. Maybe we'll do a modern day film one of these days.
Yeah. Hear Elvis
Um,
gush about something that's actually in color. That should be
right,
interesting.
yeah, surprising, yeah. Um, yeah, I think the only color movie that I would have ever thought you'd watch was maybe Wizard of Oz, just because it too was ancient.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so Roaring Twenties. Oh man, I've got to say it was, Cagney lived up to what I hoped he would be.
Mhm.
Very different from Bogar, the way they play things, but at the same time, um, both of them just straight up gangster thugs with
Yeah.
class, and
Mhm.
that's the difference. Um, that a lot of like movies these days, like the bad guys are just ruthless, but back then, there was they, if you were in their group, like they'll go out of their way for you,
Mhm.
and they're respectful until they're not. And then when they're not, it's gonna be a punch in the
Oh
nose or a shot to the gut.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's actually an actress in this that is a returning friend of the show. Um, and I actually referenced the fact that she was going to be a returning friend of the show when we first watched. Well, when we talked about the first movie she was in, because I knew eventually we'd be covering this.
yep,
Priscilla Lane, who plays Cagney's girlfriend, kind of girlfriend, his love interest.
love interest. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, love interest.
Um, she played Cary Grant's wife in Arsenic and Old Lace.
Okay. See,
Mhm.
I recognized her the whole time. I
Mhm.
knew that we had watched a movie with her, but she's not in Arsenic and Old Lace that much.
No.
And because of that, I was like, man, Ellis is gonna roast me because I cannot place this girl.
Mhm.
Um, but that helps knowing that she was just in it a little
Yeah.
bit. But I recognized her and I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna look it up on purpose so that we can talk about it.
Mhm.
But yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. How close were those movies together? Do you know? Off the top of your head?
I think Arsenic and Old Lace came out in 41. This came out in 39.
Okay. Got you.
I love how you specified top of your head, so I couldn't Google it. Oh,
Yeah. I was
yeah.
just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Arsenic and Old Lace came out in either 40 or 41.
Okay.
So they were pretty close together.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. She looks the same now that I'm picturing Arsenic and Old Lace
Hmm.
and Roaring Twenties. Yeah. makes sense. I think her hair was longer or something in Arsenic and Old Lace, and so it was, yeah, it threw me a little bit. But something that Ellis has worded very neatly is like when you see somebody from these old movies, it's like, you know, seeing an old friend. It's like, they're back. That's good. So I didn't know where I knew this friend from, much like I do in real life, but I did recognize her. And in this movie, she had a very large role, and yeah, she killed it. She was very very convincing and very like trying to do the right thing, but also like conflicted.
You
And
gotta
that's just
appreciate
fun.
You gotta appreciate the cringe comedy. And yes, I am using modernism. The cringe comedy of the first time when he and his buddy go to her house and find out, yeah, she's still in high school at the very beginning of the film before the first
Oh
time skip.
yeah.
Like, yeah, no, we wrote you this letter, and this picture was from a play I was in, and just the dawning horror on Cagney's face. I'm just,
Oh man.
yeah.
Man. Okay, so there's a line that she says, and she's like, it's something to the effect of, I got an A on my algebra test.
Oh yeah.
And and he's like, okay, she's a kid. I didn't realize. I mean, she was probably like 17 or 18, but several years go by just for folks at home wondering about
there's a
this
lot
film.
of time skips in this film.
Yeah. And so when she does become his love interest, she is older, an adult.
The minute I said that, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I worded that proper. Thank you for clarifying.
No, yeah. We got it's the Hays Code. They'll take care of it for us. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that.
This movie is probably one of the things that got me interested in the Hays Code. We are going to have to talk about the ending of this film at some point, because the Hays Code made gangster films what they are. Because, they said, okay, yeah, sure, you can show them doing all this bad stuff, but on one condition. And we'll either talk about this condition now, or we'll get into the condition a little bit, depending on how we go, because we don't plan these things.
I mean, it's that they get their just desserts in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what the Hays Code, like you can glamorize this or that, but at the end of the day, you have to show that crime doesn't pay, or the bad guy is not victorious, something like that. That's very in line with the Hays Code, correct?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about this is Cagney has played some bad men before. But with this one, he kind of feels like he did accidentally stumble into it.
Yep, literally, yeah.
And it just sort of feels like he's only doing this because, well, this pays, and I'm here now, and I guess this is what I do.
Yeah. And there's a desperation for the veterans that came back, who, and that was something that they made a point of at the beginning, was that they had been off fighting in World War I, and then they came back, and like nothing was the same.
Right.
And so it was just like the other review of our long review of a movie.
Yes. The one where I felt my soul dying. I remember that one quite well.
You remember? Yeah. Best years of our life. So yeah, like with that one, it just shows a reality of coming back from war and home not being what they remembered it,
right?
Because it's changed. Everything did change, and so yeah, that was cool. Like I said, the effects, like the special effects, like when they were showing, I think it was Black Tuesday, like there was like the buildings were melting,
Mhm.
and I was like, that's pretty wild for back then.
Yeah.
But it was all this symbolism and stuff that was like, okay, things are not going well at this point in history.
There's actually a shot. I don't think it's the whole montage. It might be the whole montage, but I know there's definitely a shot of like the front of a building getting firebombed.
Oh yeah, yes.
That was actually it was either filmed in this one and then reused for Angels with Dirty Faces, or it was filmed for Angels with Dirty Faces and then reused for this one. Both of those are Cagney pictures.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So they they reused it because it was so good.
Yeah, and
Okay.
probably because it saved them money.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I
That
can
makes sense.
remember watching, the other film, Angels with Dirty Faces, and it got to that scene. I'm like, wait, no, I know that. I've seen that exact shot before. You
You
can't lie to
would.
me, movie.
That's right. That's right. Ellis, he will pick things up like that. He's like,
Mhm.
nope. I know that look on that person's face. They use
Mhm.
that in 3 movies,
Yeah.
and
Can we just talk about how great an actor Cagney is? Because
yes,
I
I
feel
think we
like
need
it's
to.
such a bad, I feel bad for not including him sooner. Granted, I didn't have any of his movies on DVD up until very
Well, that
recently. So,
that makes sense of why
yeah.
we didn't so far.
I mean, to me, he is the gangster actor.
Mm,
Like he was one of the first because he'd been starring in those types of roles since I want to say 1930,
wow.
1930, 1931 with Public Enemy. Not to be confused with Public Enemies. That is a 2009 film, and the two are not connected. But
So this one was just called Public Enemy.
yeah, the Public Enemy, I think.
The Public Enemy. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. And that was Cagney.
Yes.
Yeah, man. So yeah, as far as like the 1920s, 30s gangsters, and like I said, this is the only one that I've seen of Cagney,
Mhm.
but yeah, his his acting, as with all good acting, didn't feel like acting.
Right.
Um, there was a few times though. Well, let me say this first, and then I'll give a critique. Um, there, so yeah, he was just believable. Oh man, and like his even just his slight expressions on his face,
Mhm.
was like, oh, the emotion behind um him being let down by something that happened in the movie,
Mhm.
or him realizing that he's overreacted, and he's like, okay, yep, I was wrong in that. I'm going, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, I look forward to doing more Cagneys.
I mean, he's. I'll say this, and then you can get to whatever you were critiquing. He's a good actor when Bogart can act frightened of him and can convincingly sell it.
Oh man, I know what scene you're talking about.
Mhm.
And first of all, I've never seen anything with Bogart where he is scared.
Mhm.
Period.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't get scared in his movies. But man, yeah, that scene that you're talking about. Oh, and yes. So Bogart was good at pretending to be scared,
Mhm.
acting very
Yeah.
well. But yes, if Cagney hadn't have been so scary in that
Mhm.
moment, it wouldn't have made sense. It'd have been like, what's Bogart doing? Like,
Yeah.
come on, you're Humphrey Bogart. You got this. But yeah, he became such a terrifying, um, menace at that point that it was like, oh yeah, even Humphrey Bogart would be intimidated there.
And I think to further clarify this, because some people at home might not know who Cagney is, because he was a big time actor back then, but he's sort of he's faded out of the public, the cultural zeitgeist. Cagney was 5'5".
Mm-hmm.
Cagney was a tiny, tiny man.
Yeah.
But he also, because he did some amateur boxing, from what I understand, like when he was younger. And he was quoted as basically saying, I prefer to fight guys bigger than me,
Hmm.
because, otherwise there's no challenge.
Nice. Yeah,
Why would I
yeah.
fight someone my own height? There's no challenge there. So, I mean,
Right.
Cagney's used to, again, to steal a modernism, punching up.
Sure. Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Metaphorically and literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about punching. There was a few times in the movie where he was acting like he was gonna punch somebody,
Mhm.
but like to me, and we try to do this with every movie, like
Yeah.
point one thing out that like yeah, it he would go like this and then pretend like he was gonna punch, but
Mhm.
it was just like he was never gonna punch that guy. Like it never was even going through his mind that he was
Mhm.
going to, and that was just the acting, I think.
There might
Maybe he
actually
was intimidating them. I don't
there,
know.
there might be an actual reason for that. To sort of talk about another movie for like a few seconds, I referenced The Public Enemy earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a scene in it where Cagney and the guy playing his brother get in an argument, and the brother says something, and you see Cagney whirl around, and he hits him, and the brother goes down, and the actor doesn't move for an uncomfortable amount of time
Okay.
because Cagney legitimately slugged him on accident.
Okay. See, now that's what I was kind of wondering. Especially when you mentioned he was a boxer. Like the
Mhm.
thought crossed my mind. Maybe he had to like remind himself in the moment, oh, I'm not really gonna hit this guy.
Yeah.
um yeah, so uh I'm looking forward to seeing that movie and trying to spot where he decks the guy for real.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so let me ask you this. Favorite favorite character in the movie.
It's not fair. That's Cagney.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if it is, it
Bogart's a
is.
close second. Bogart's a close second, especially for that scene I mentioned earlier, because where you just kind of see the madness hiding underneath the
Mm.
character. He's always sort of had that bloodlust to him, but the minute you see the mask just sort of drop.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's very Humphrey Bogart in it, like laid back, cool, but then all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
And it's like,
Just that,
whoa.
yeah. Which, I mean, you sort of kind of get hints of that, like at the beginning. Um, where they're in the war, and I think it's the third one, the guy we haven't talked about, mainly because I don't know what else he's in, the lawyer,
Yep.
who's trying to take a shot at the one German soldier, and he's just a kid. He doesn't even look 18, and Bogart snatches the rifle and shoots him and goes, well, now he won't be.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's sort of hinted throughout the whole film that this man's a psychopath.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think I just enjoy Bogart so much. Bogart. Um yeah, I think he was my favorite character of this. In part just seeing him do something different than what he normally does.
Yeah.
Um and that may change as I see more Cagney movies. You know, how I view this movie. But I
Well,
will say that man, Cagney, so believable, just killed it, just really showing like ups and downs of his life
Mhm.
after the war. Yeah, like I said, based on current events that were going on, that like you said also, that these people had gone through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
To indulge in something that the audience will have no clue what I'm talking about, but you will. I've mentioned before that Cagney is my choice to play Jack.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
had this conversation before. You know,
yeah. So I'll go ahead and plug your books.
yeah,
So uh Ellis is an author, and he writes some um really riveting books about a lot of this time period. And so yeah, Jack Messer is the guy that he's referring to, and Cagney would play the perfect one. We'll leave a link in the
yeah.
description. If they're on Amazon, right?
They are. They are.
Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and put a link in the description of this YouTube video. And if it goes on the podcast world, we'll put a link in there too, so that people can go buy your books. Ellis would not promote himself like this, so I'm going to.
Yeah, Ellis is
But
just a little like, but no, yeah, no. This is, like I said, this is probably my favorite Cagney film.
yeah,
I just was like, what else can we say about it? We said, oh, because we're sliding back into, oh, this is good, and then just repeating that ad nauseum.
yeah, it's really hard to find other adjectives to describe it. And we want people to go watch the
Yeah.
movie. And y'all know that from season 1, that we harped on that the whole time, was that like, go watch the film.
Mhm.
And so yeah, this is nothing new from us, but yeah, let's talk about that last scene.
Yeah. So, as stated previously, the Hayes Code would basically, the one concession that they gave movies like this was, okay, you can show your hero, because the good guys aren't supposed, the bad guys are always supposed to meet their just desserts, are always supposed to get what's coming to them, and the good guys are supposed to be good guys. So their one concession was, okay, you can have your protagonist kill all these people, do all this stuff, but generally, um the punishment had to fit the crime.
Mm,
And so, and again, ladies and gentlemen, us, except for certain instances, we try not to spoil the film. But this, I don't feel like I'm spoiling it, because 90% of gangster films back then end this way. Once you've seen one, it shouldn't come as a surprise. And at the end of the film, when he finally sort of comes out of that almost 10-year slump he's been in, and realizes, hey, wait a minute, this isn't who I want to be. And he storms Bogart's little apartment mansion, whatever it was, and just ends up getting in a gunfight, ends up getting shot on the steps of that church.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just. I mean, what did you want to say about it? We'll start with you,
Man,
because you just saw.
yeah, it's just so yeah, it reminded me a little bit of, like, when, this is a modern movie reference. I mean, not so modern now, but more modern than the 30s. When Darth Vader became a good guy at the very end, he saved Luke, and then he died.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, Cagney was in a slump, and he was going to do the right thing, and did. He rescued and did good things. I'm gonna try not to spoil.
Yeah.
He did good things. He made sure that people were protected, whatnot. But also, yeah, as he was protecting, he he got bumped off.
Hmm.
And it was very uh fitting with yeah, that the gangster lifestyle.
Hmm.
Um and it just also went into, okay, yeah, he's been a straight up criminal. He does something good, and there was just something very I'm sure it was on purpose, but yeah, something very fitting about him, uh making it to the church and then dying. It,
Hmm.
like a redemptive story there of him doing good and then ending like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then after that, the music picks up with this upbeat tune. It's like the end, and then it goes da, 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 da. And I was like, "Whoa, that, that's kind of a surprise."
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm just wild about Harry starts playing.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the theme song of the movie. And so yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise. But as far as like the content and like the story arc, yeah, it was very very exciting. And yeah, you in good movies these days, you still see a lot of that.
Hmm.
Like I mentioned, one of the good Star Wars movies.
Hate the fact that that's a qualifier now, but here we are.
Yep, yep.
Oh, that's an Ellis rant for another day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
We don't have to go into
yeah,
that.
but and I mean, there's so much of this movie we haven't covered because there, of course, this isn't an especially long movie. I think
It's
it's
not.
been a while, but it is such a dense film
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
because we've barely, and by barely I mean I referenced him in passing, the one guy, the third soldier in that
Right?
foxhole.
Yep.
We haven't even touched on the that lady who ran the speakeasy,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Trying to remember what her name was
and I'm trying to remember the name of
in
her
it.
actress. I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, the fact we can't remember her name or her actress is not anything indicative to how well she did. She did a wonderful job. My mind is just my memory shot. I don't know about that.
Well, I yeah, yeah. I never have a good memory.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I never have a good memory. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. Yeah. But anyway, no, she was awesome. Yeah, when we first meet her, we think that she's just taking advantage of one of the main characters, and then it turns out that she's like very very interested in working with them,
Mhm.
and she runs the speakeasy. It's her joint, and yeah, like her conflicts that she has throughout it. Um, yeah, there's just so some gangster movies that I've seen are just kind of like shoot 'em ups, rob a bank, go to the next scene. But there is
Mhm.
a lot of like depth of emotion in this one.
Mhm.
I don't I don't know how much it's different from other Cagney movies, of course, but I'll say that um yeah, I really enjoyed, like, there was heartbreak, heartache, and yeah, lots of cake. There wasn't really lots of cake. I was just trying to think of something that rhymed.
Mhm.
Anyway, um Ellis has to deal with me like this all the time. Yeah. So, but there was like, yeah. So with the surrounding history that was going on, with the in-depth personal problems that people had, their feelings towards, like we said, love interests, and then things not going the way some people wanted them to go, and then things going well for others. Yeah, it's a very human movie,
Yeah.
very emotive.
It's a gangster film, but like you said, it doesn't quite feel like. I'm trying to think of a good example. But to sort of bounce off what you said, it's not a gangster film where being the gangster is the main focus of the film.
Yeah,
It's a film where it's basically it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's using it to tell a complex story beyond just this man is a gangster, and he does gangstery things.
yeah. And like you said earlier, he stumbled into being a gangster. It wasn't
Mhm.
like he was like planning on being a bad guy. It was just a person who was in a tight situation
Mhm.
that turned to crime and then became a big shot.
And I love that scene because if my memory of that scene serves me correct, um, he stumbles into it, but he stumbles into it mainly because he decides to be very Cagney in that moment and very stubborn and very much no, you're supposed to pay me. I brought you this. What's going on?
Right. Regardless of why, or his ignorance of knowing what was going on, he was like, no, I'm gonna get what I came for. So yeah, he had a touch of gangster rebellion the whole time.
Mhm.
That made it easy for him to transition into that world, but at the same time, that wasn't the world that he was like planning on.
Right.
Which I think again is just really well writing.
Mhm.
And we've talked about like they can be the best actors, but if the writing is not good
Mhm.
and the directing is poor, like it's just a lot of things have to line up to make a classic like this one.
And I would definitely label this one a classic. And it's sad because I mean, you ask a lot of people. I've read a lot of different interviews. I think Orson Welles has said it. Michael J. Fox has said it. Steven Spielberg. There have been several people who have all said, "Yeah, Cagney is probably the best actor who's ever lived."
Oh
Now, whether
wow.
you agree with that or not, that's whatever. But the fact is, there are so many people who hold him in such high esteem, and yet outside of like the classic film community, gangster film community, not a whole lot of people know who he is.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
whatever reason, his movies, they're classics, but they weren't granted the same, acclaim as like Bogart's later stuff.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Um, I honestly don't know.
That's
Being perfectly
yeah. I
honest.
I mean that's just a peculiar thing because yeah, he's just as good an actor.
Mhm.
Um, I I think it might be, and this is just Zach speculating, just because okay, movies like The Maltese Falcon, movies like Casablanca blew up so big and they
Mhm.
haven't gone away. I
Right.
mean, even people who don't watch black and white movies probably know those two movies.
Or at least they know half remembered lines from Casablanca.
Yeah, exactly. Like very most quoted and misquoted movie.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, because I think maybe because those movies are so famous, and just like all the quotes from them, like you were saying, I mean, all of the legend that surrounds those movies and just the longevity of them has elevated people like Bogart to a level that has overshadowed Cagney. And
Right.
I don't know for sure, but that seems to be a contributing factor.
That makes sense to me because, yeah, I think just because these movies back then, I mean, this one, like I said, it's dense, but it's not a B movie. That's not what I'm about to say. But I feel like it probably wasn't as held in such high regard because it was just a gangster film.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you know, Maltese Falcon was based off a book that was already pretty popular. So
Right. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating because I'm not going to say if I think Cagney's the best actor because I mean I think there's a lot of competition for that role,
R-
even in just
sure.
old Hollywood. Because
Sure.
then you could go, well, what about Bogart or what about William Powell? And then I just glare at
Mm,
you and sit here in silence. Um,
yeah.
but you know, but I think he's a very good actor. He's very good at making you believe what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so even uh well, it's significant the names that you mentioned that did say
Mm-hmm.
that he was like one of the best to ever do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I I think, and I'll need to see more of his movies, but yeah, just based on this one movie,
Mm-hmm.
I and for the genre, the gangster genre of that time period, I would already put him up there as one of the goats.
Mm-hmm.
To use a modern term. Sorry, Ellis.
I just think it's funny because the reason why I've heard that Michael J. Fox because there's actually a picture out there of Michael J. Fox with a very old James Cagney.
Oh wow. So they knew each other.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
the main thing I've heard is it's probably because Fox himself was a short actor in Hollywood, just sort of
Yeah,
a
like that's the
kinship.
only reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's funny though. Okay, so let's rate it. Um let me go first.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, basing it off of the same criteria that I have been. Yeah, I'd give it a 8 out of 10.
What would you what would you knock those what would make you dock those 2 points?
The
I'll
two
get my words
points.
because you said 8 out of 10. So
Right, yeah, yeah. That's good. Pushing me a little bit. All right,
yeah,
let's
I don't know
get
if we
down
did
to
this
it.
in the first season, but I'm going to make it my mission to do it in the second, which
Let's
means I
do it.
won't remember past this point. But
Let's do it. Let's do
yeah.
it. Okay. Um yeah, so when so there's a level of kind of knowing what was coming
Mhm.
for me. Um that because there wasn't a big surprise like some of the other movies we've
Yeah,
watched, particularly going back to the best years of our lives.
that movie
Um
will haunt us forever.
Yeah, yeah. Y'all have got to watch that movie. I know this isn't the episode for it, but yeah, go back and watch that episode that we did, and then well, watch the movie first, then watch the episode. But anyway, um, yeah. So and yeah, and like the the second Thin Man, what was it called?
After the Thin Man.
After the Thin Man, yeah, there's these big twists and stuff that you're not seeing coming, and I just love that so much. So that that's probably just I anticipated what was going to happen,
Mhm.
and so that's probably why it doesn't get a 10 out of 10. But yeah, that does not diminish the fact that I like the movie. But yeah, it doesn't get a 10 out of 10 from me.
See, and this might just be because it's been long enough that any minor flaws have been kind of blasted from my memory. I'd have to give it probably about 10 out of 10, just because for me it's, you know, and it's probably because I have such good memories of watching this film. This was one of the first old black and white films I saw after I watched The Thin Man for the first time. But it's just, to me, this is the gangster film. There are probably better gangster films out there, but this is the pinnacle for me.
Nice,
And I
nice.
mean, it's got, to me, one of the best. Let me slap on some qualifiers before I say this. One of the best supporting roles Bogey has ever played.
Okay, yeah. Well, I
I was
haven't
about
seen
to
a
say,
lot of his supporting roles, but yeah, you needed that qualifier there.
yeah, because I was like, I'm not about to say he's like, oh, this is my favorite Bogey role over the Maltese Falcon. You would
Yeah.
probably drive over to my house and slap me live on camera.
Live on camera. It wouldn't take me long to get there. How angry I'd be. um but I think that's important too, though, what you said, like, as far as giving it a 10 out of 10, like, our memories and our opinions and what we base things off on, why a movie is so important to us and we love it so much, why it's the pinnacle. Like, so many things go into that. So for me, this was, it was the first one. And so, thing is, as even as we watch more movies and time goes on, things hit us different just as humans. And so, I mean, that could change for me. It could go down to a 7.
Oh no.
No, it would probably go up. It would probably go up. But yeah, I think that's really, really cool that you brought that aspect up of just like the memories we have with it and things like that. Because that affects how much we like an emotional attachment to it. Because that's really big.
Oh yeah. And as always, I say that, I try to say this every episode. Please watch the movie for yourself and form your own opinions. And once you have those opinions, come back here and debate those opinions. I would love to tell you how you're wrong. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. As I've always said, just go out, form your own opinion on these films. Don't treat us like we know what we're saying, because believe you me, we don't. I was about to say we're just really good at pretending, but I don't even know if it's that.
Well, I'll say Ellis does know his stuff, and I know how to enjoy movies or dislike movies, which is not hard to do at all. It's just opinions, but yeah, leave some comments. Let us know where would you rate it, and then why.
Mhm.
Just like he pushed me now, push back. and yeah, we're not really going to argue, but we'd love to talk about it. It'd be super cool.
And so for next month, I realized for several of the ones in the last season, I would say next week, and then it would be a month before it got released, because Ellis's brain can't do real time and then the time that other people are experiencing, because we do these once a week, but they get released once a month, and somewhere along the line that fried my brain. Going back
Math is hard.
going back and watching them and hearing me go next week and going, no, you dingus, it'll be a month. Stop it. But so next month we will be covering another Cagney film, but this is a rarity, one of only 2 that I'm aware of, where Cagney plays a government agent.
Interesting. He's a G-man, huh?
Mm-hmm. We will see y'all next week, as he just said. I said it again. We will see y'all next month. I caught myself this time, for G-Man. And as always, I'm your host, Ellis Womack. That's my co-host, Zach Anderson, and I have nothing but movies and time. See y'all.